Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special edition of Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. Tonight, we got a very special guest for you. We have the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Oxnard, Carmen Ramirez. Just a quick little bio about her. Carmen Ramirez was raised in the San Gabriel Valley of LA County, one of seven siblings, a graduate of Loyola School of Law in Los Angeles in 1974 and was admitted to the California State Bar the same year. For 16 years, she was the executive director of Channel County's Legal Services Association, which served the legal needs of the poor in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. Years after, she put her skill of being a fluent Spanish speaker by assisting the residents of the La Colonia neighborhood in the city of Oxnard, serving as the coordinator of Ventura Superior Court's Self-Help Legal Center. She now maintains a private legal practice that focuses on Social Security disability and consumer law matter, as well as pro bono assistance. She currently is serving her third term on the Oxnard City Council after being elected in 2010 and have been the Mayor Pro Tem since 2012. She represents the city on multiple city committees, county and state committees, and continues to be an active volunteer throughout the community. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Carmen Ramirez, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Oxnard and candidate for the 5th District Supervisor seat. Carmen?
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate this opportunity, and ask anything you like.
That's a very dangerous thing to say, you know?
If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. I don't make stuff up.
I appreciate your honesty about that, Carmen. So, the number one question is, why now did you decide to move for a higher office as opposed to maybe running for mayor, since it's an open seat this year?
Well, one of the reasons is there is an opening on the Board of Supervisors, and it is the perfect opportunity for me to, first of all, I've been on City Council for 10 years, 10 interesting years, as they say, very interesting years, and learned a lot. And we could talk about that. I hope we talk about that later, what I've learned. And also Supervisor Zaragoza has been there for 3 terms, I believe. And there's a vacancy, and I believe I am the person to represent District 5, which is the majority of Oxnard, and portions of the unincorporated county, the beach areas in El Rio, and Nyland Acres and Strickland. And I know this community very well. Unlike other candidates, I don't say I was born and raised here. I'm not sure that that actually is a deciding factor. I don't think it should be, though. I've been a homeowner since 1992 in Oxnard, and I have worked here since 1978 as a legal aid attorney, and then as a private attorney, and then as your city council person. And when I've been on city council up until very recently, I've been voted in by the whole city. And now we're in districts. I do have a lot of support in District 2, which is where I live, and north to River Park. But I feel very strong connections in the Colonia. As you say, I worked there for years, and I have a lot of great memories from there. I still have clients there. I go there to restaurants, but I know the rest of the city pretty well, all over the city. And I feel like I am the person who knows what's going on in this city and can continue to represent the people well with their issues. And if you like, today I could tell you about all the things that I've been dealing with today beyond the campaign, just things that people call me about and ask for assistance or information. So that would start off our discussion. Why? I am a lawyer. I believe that gives me some advantage in knowing how to assess evidence. That was my favorite topic in law school, evidence. And not just making decisions based on how I feel or other people feel. What is the evidence that this is a good policy what is the evidence that this is going to accomplish the goals we're trying to reach? I know how to interview people. I have had to spend many years talking to people, find out what's really bugging them. And a lot of times it is, I know one of the things we're going to talk about is mental health and emotional, social justice demands that people have. I feel like I'm the right person at the right time.
I appreciate that. And you know what? It's actually a good segue because we're actually going to jump into behavioral mental health services that is being provided by the county. A year ago, the VC Star did kind of like a survey of all Ventura County residents as to what they believe are the top issues facing the county. And behavioral mental health services actually ranked the fourth biggest concern for residents of Ventura County. If you are lucky enough to be on the Board of Supervisors, what would you do to work to bring additional behavioral mental health services to the county?
Well, for me, this is a perfect question for me to answer. Just adjusting the camera here so you get a better view of my furniture. First of all, I'm so grateful to have a home. Yes, I worked for it. Yes, I pay the bill, but so many people don't have homes or don't have stable homes. I believe this leads to mental health issues. I represent people right now trying to get benefits because they have serious mental health issues. They're suffering from depression. Some of my clients are, in the past, have been schizophrenic. It's their family that asked me to help them. I've been around so long that I represented people who are at Camarillo State Hospital, which is now the locale of Cal State University Channel Islands. I talked to people who had serious, terrible, life-threatening problems, suicidal, threatening harm to others, mostly threatening harm to themselves, and sometimes family members who didn't understand what they were going through. And I could tell you now that a big issue in our city has been lack of appropriate mental health services for Spanish-speaking people and people with limited insurance. I'll give you an example. Right now I have a client who is seeking she's seeking disability benefits. She has some physical problems, but overlaying all of that is a deep depression. When you try to get Social Security disability benefits, it's not easy. And you have to prove your case through documentation, through doctor's reports, and you have to meet a certain standard that the Social Security Administration presents. One of the things they demand in cases of any kind of illness or infirmity is a documentation from your medical health provider. It cannot be your family member says, gee, she's really depressed. It can't be from even your own personal doctor or therapist unless they are a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So my client, for example, has gone to a marriage and family counselor, marriage, family, and child counselor. They do terrific work. However, Social Security won't accept that as enough information. So I see, there are two ways to go about it. Social Security should ease up the rules because a lot of the people don't have access to a psychologist or to a psychiatrist. They have to go to a therapist who's offering services. The other way to go, because my clients tend to be Spanish speakers, is to have the county facilities as well as the private facilities offer these services to the clients. And I know that the county's had some difficulty in the past of retaining Spanish-speaking therapists, Spanish-speaking mental health workers, Spanish-speaking psychiatrists and psychologists. It's rare, they're in demand. And that means the county, in our county, we have to try harder to get those medical providers, mental health providers in the system to properly treat, because what's the result? People don't get health care, they don't live good lives, they suffer, they make other people suffer, they become dependent on the welfare system. We want to be a society that's compassionate to people and doesn't just say, well, you're not productive, so we're going to throw you to the curb. So that is one thing I would do. I also think we have to get over the stigma of mental health illness. I know many people near and dear to me who are really depressed right now because they don't know what the future holds. They've lost their jobs, they've lost their health insurance, they may be on the verge of losing their home, their children aren't happy, their elders are sick and they can't visit because of the virus. So it's a serious, serious issue. So I will be looking at how to make our system more robust, how to keep the people who are there now, who are doing a good job, well compensated and happy. It's almost like your job one. I know that you stop me if I go too long. It's so great not to have that timer. Thank you. I know so many people who are, just in this really serious state, and we've got to focus on the health of the people. And my platform has always been, I will make every decision as I have at the city council and as I will as a supervisor on the health of the people. What's good for them, not what's good for a particular special interest or business, what's good for the people. Because if the people aren't healthy, just as we can see in our country, if people aren't healthy, we can't be a strong economy. We can't have people being productive. And there's tremendous social problems that come with that.
Now, you brought up a great point. We are in the age of COVID, and we have been living this virus for the past 7, 8 months. And you also brought up the fact that it has also gotten to the point where people have lost their jobs, people are unsure of what the future holds for them, and people are even in the position where they may even lose their homes. Which brings us to our next topic about affordable housing in the county. As you are aware, in the city of Oxnard, many times, as I mentioned multiple times at council, the fact that working with the school district, you learn that there could be 2 to 3 families living in a 1-bedroom apartment or in a single family home because of the fact that they can't afford their own place on their own. Average rent in the city of Oxnard is roughly around $1,700 a month, and we don't have jobs that really compensate our residents enough to be able to afford that. What steps would you take on the Board of Supervisors to try to bring more affordable housing into the county as well into the city?
Let me start by saying, again, as the legal aid attorney that I have been, I still feel like in my heart I'm a legal aid attorney, which is the last resort for people who don't have other options for legal services. So many times my focus was on habitability issues, supporting efforts to bring affordable housing throughout the county and in Oxnard, and challenging the slumlords that are out there. Now, I want to say this, there are a lot of great landlords, a lot of them are smaller, and I'm very concerned that because they're not being paid rent because their tenants have lost their income, they are in danger of losing their property. And I'm really unhappy that this hasn't been addressed. It's coming to a head, and people will lose their housing, people will lose their property. And I'm very disappointed that the federal government could not get anything done as far as the Relief Act. It's just unacceptable to not help people in the worst crisis we've had in 100 years. Just completely insane, crazy. So what would I do? I would continue to do what I've been doing and step it up. For example, some people might remember the Rancho Sespe workers who my office kept in their farm worker housing for 9 years because their employer, who had bought Rancho Sespe, Rifcom Ranch, decided those farm workers who lived there, they were not seasonal workers, they lived there for generations in farm worker housing. They decided to organize under the United Farm Workers flag. The property was sold, new owners came in, a corporate agriculture, and they gave everybody an eviction notice. People who lived there for generations didn't have any place to go. My office did the lawsuit to stop the evictions, and we ultimately kept them there for 9 years. But what was the result? They don't live there now. We also represented Rancho Sespe Workers Improvement Association, which built farm worker housing, a co-op, which you will see on 126. It's called, like, I think some people call it Rainbow House, Rainbow Settlement, or whatever. But that was the result of our efforts. And I'll tell you that there were some of the most interesting times. We had to go to the Court of Appeal to allow that project to go forward. Cabrillo Economic Development built the housing for them and turned it over to the nonprofits. So that's the kind of thing I've done. Also, when in the 90s, early 90s, before I had any clue about thinking about going, running for office, my office sued the city of Oxnard for failing to follow the housing element law by not allowing the zoning for low income and extremely low income folks, including farm workers. And we sued the city and won, because the city was not doing what it should do. But since that time, the city's been making a great effort. I don't sue the city anymore. I hope people don't sue the city or don't have to sue the city. So, and also I'll tell you, a lot of times, I'm not sure that we've had affordable housing projects come to city council where there hasn't been someone who doesn't like it. And I really understand people are worried about parking. They're worried about overcrowding. Sometimes they're worried about crime, but I do believe when people have stable housing, that addresses a lot of the crime issues, the poverty issues. I think that one of the other cases I was involved in is what is now the VSSR Chavez situation, which is out on Wainimi Road. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. VSSR Chavez was actually a group of properties owned by a slumlord who totally ripped off the people living there in terribly dangerous conditions for themselves and their children. Our city filed some code violations against the owner, but didn't go far enough. So we also stopped evictions, but we also sued the owners for nuisance. They were creating a nuisance and endangering people's lives. We won that case, a big money settlement, a judgment against the owner, and guess what? Couldn't pay it. So what happened? He turned it over to Cabrillo Economic Development to build VSSR Chavez, and that was the first and perhaps the only farm worker housing project that bears his name, Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez family doesn't let anybody just stick the name Cesar Chavez on it, but that was very appropriate. My colleague at the time and my friend, Barbara Macri Ortiz, was the lead attorney on that. And it was a tremendous victory. And I think I've been saying that's something people out there should do, private attorneys, even the city, looking at some slum properties where owners are not taking care of the property, and they don't have the right to do that. That's called an unfair business practice, because the good landlords out there that are following the code and being fair to their tenants, keeping their property up, they have to compete with a property owner that won't do that. There needs to be some consequences. So I'm totally in favor of that. The other thing is I'm on the Southern California Association of Governments representing the city of Oxnard. They have something called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. It's controversial. Some cities, some counties, they don't want to build more housing. I understand. You feel like you can't pay for the infrastructure now, or you don't want the traffic or the crowds. But listen, you don't want the housing, you're going to have the homeless. You're going to lose people you want to keep in your city. So we have to do what we can do within the guidelines of SOAR, which I totally support, and go up. And you're going to see that in downtown Oxnard. It's coming. It's already here despite the pandemic. There's building going on. There's going to be good housing options by the transportation center. and elsewhere. So, but I also want to say, see, this is what happens when I don't have a timer. I also want to say that we're going to continue to do that, but Oxnard should not bear the whole burden of providing workforce housing. It needs to be spread out. People need to do their fair share. I've heard, I won't name any city, but I've heard city council members and school board members from other cities in the county say, we don't have a homeless problem. Isn't that great? Well, I like to say, well, who is cleaning your homes? Who's taking care of your elders? Where are your first responders living? Where are the people who are landscapers working in your restaurants? Where do they live? They live in overcrowded housing in Oxnard. That's not right.
And you know what, Carmen, your answer is spot on to the question. And it actually broke it up to three different segues that I can go in. So now you put me in a position, I got to think which one I want to go down. But I actually
go all the way.
We'll do all three of them, but the first one we'll tackle is the agriculture. And you mentioned our farm workers. You also mentioned SOAR. As you know, and many of our viewers know, that Ventura County is a very spread out. We have a lot of ag land, and we passed the SOAR a couple of years ago that protects, that has certain protection over our ag land. Now, what steps will you take in order to, one, protect our farm workers so that they're still able to have those jobs, but at the same time, to be able to play that role of developing in the county?
Let's talk about what why agriculture is so important to our county. It's traditional. We have some of the best farmland on the planet. Maybe people don't know that, but it's because it's a riverbed. Anything grows here except maybe coffee, which I'm concerned about because it needs elevation. We got to have our coffee. It's very rich, so we have to preserve it for industry's sake. Agriculture is an industry, and for feeding the rest of California, maybe sometimes the world. What does it take to have good agriculture? You've got to have labor. An author wrote a book called Factories in the Field. So that beautiful green landscape you see when you're coming down the grade from Los Angeles, you see how beautiful. And I know whenever I go to LA, I used to go to LA frequently. I have family living all over LA County and into San Diego County. But I always felt like when I came down the grade from wherever I was, I suddenly was in my home, air-conditioned paradise, especially in Oxnard, maybe not so much other cities. And I thought, God, it's so beautiful. But what keeps that going? Yes, it is our growers who are investing. It's hard to be a farmer now. I know that. I hear that. But you can't do it without farm workers. We don't have machines that pick strawberries. We don't have machines that pick celery, but I think they're working on some machine to pick tomatoes. Who is going to provide that labor? And let's just say, who's doing it? Who is picking the produce? That we have never gone to the store during this pandemic or farmer's market. I go every Thursday to our Plaza Park farmer's market to support that and the local ag. We've never gone a day where we didn't see it there. But in other parts of the country, you go to the grocery store and there's no fresh produce. You got to buy frozen. So we have that wonderful product, but who's bringing it to us? It's farm workers. And the growers know that maybe up to 90% are undocumented people. So we have to find a just way to provide quality of life for our farm workers. Right now, they're really suffering from the virus, not because of what's happening in the field, because they're outdoors. And I do believe that mostly they're given the protection they need. It's because they're living in overcrowded situations with their kids, with their elders, with their family members. And the whole family suffering because of that. The compensation is good usually when you're working, but not everybody's working. So we have to find a way. And I've been a personal contributor to the 805 on DocuFund. You know, and I know people who think they'll say things like, because we're going to talk about immigration now, Daniel, a little bit. I know people say everybody get in line to be immigrated, but the reality is there's no line. That people come and work. They may not be coming lawfully, but they're employed lawfully because the people employ them know very well what their situation is. And sometimes people take advantage of that so that they can't complain about lack of sanitation, lack of breaks, lack of too much pesticides, whatever. But putting that aside, everybody knows we're in this kind of embrace where we have to accept that for now. The solution is comprehensive immigration reform. The city, the county wouldn't have anything to say about that. That's a federal process. And so far it hasn't happened. It was on the verge of happening, but unfortunately it didn't go anywhere. And that's tragic for people. What is also tragic, what's happened to our dreamers, our young people who came here as children, babies sometimes, and sometimes didn't discover what their immigration status was until they graduated and wanted to go to college. I would like people to just put themselves in the place of these young people who don't see a way forward till we get this change. So I really appreciate our current Board of Supervisors. I think the majority supported just sending a letter to Congress saying, please take care of our dreamers. It's a very small step, but it's a step. So that's one thing, agriculture. Now SOAR protects agriculture, doesn't allow building on farmland. I do know some farmers would like to just move on because their children do not want to continue. I understand that. But the law was passed, an ordinance was passed in our city and in the county, most of the cities, to protect ag land. So yes, there can be development, but there has to be a vote on it if it's outside of the city guidelines. So the people want it. They want green space. They want agriculture. The other threat to agriculture is water. We're starting a big mega drought cycle. Luckily, Oxnard had the foresight to start an advanced water purification facility, has invested $25 million in the past. Right now, we don't have any money to expand it, but that can be the ticket to saving water. Water can be cleaned. I always like to say all water has passed through dinosaur kidneys. Nobody's creating more water, but it's possible to destroy the quality of water. It's possible to make it so you can't clean it. That's why we have to really try to keep the pesticides out and pharmaceuticals. And we're doing a good job, but we have to really pay attention to that. So those are three things. Farm workers, please support your farm workers. Know who's putting that salad on your table. I've sat next to people in meetings who are uninformed and complain about quote unquote illegal immigration. And as we're eating lunch, I'll say, don't eat that. Try not to eat that, because certainly an undocumented person picked your tomatoes and your lettuce. If you don't like them, don't eat that. It doesn't go over well sometimes. It's too sarcastic. We need to be informed. We can't just be ignorant and say, I don't like illegal immigration. Well, are your children going to go out and pick strawberries? Probably not. Anyway, what's the next question?
You did it again. You opened another segue for me to ask a couple of questions, but one that I do want to touch on, and I asked Ronald Orejo, who is a candidate for District 3, which is the northeast portion of the city of Oxnard. And that district is pretty much surrounded by eggland. And the question is, and how to make our city safe, healthier, and environmentally friendly when we're dealing with pesticides in our farmlands. if you're elected to the Board of Supervisors, what steps would you take to ensure that our residents, because a school is going over there in that area, Del Sol High School, off of Camino del Sol and Rose, and it's still going to have ag land surrounding it. What steps are you going to take to try to ensure that residents throughout the county, and including the city of Oxnard, it stays healthy, respiratory wise, and developmental for their brain when dealing with pesticides in our ag lands?
Oxnard, you know, is, if you look at the Cal Enviro screen 3.0, you see that Oxnard, sections of Oxnard are the most heavily polluted in the state. It's part of its pesticides, part of it is offshore emissions from shipping. It's also cars and existing toxic places like Halico that have in the past contributed to bad air. I think we really all have to take a look at pesticides. Organic farming is growing. It's still expensive to buy organics, but it is up and coming. It's sort of like the Tesla, not as expensive as a Tesla, but with more people producing organics. I'm not a farmer, I'm not a scientist. I think there's a way forward to reduce the use of the super toxic pesticides. I'll tell you, the pesticide runoff is also killing our ocean. And maybe we'll talk about Fisherman's Wharf later and Channel Islands Harbor, but it's been pretty clear that that is part of the problem with algae bloom, not just in Oxnard or Channel Islands, but all over the country. The toxic bloom, the algae bloom comes from the pesticides that go and kill the oxygen and kill the fish. And there's been a particular problem, I think, in Florida with the farming of sugarcane that is polluting the lake that provides all the fresh water for the people in South Florida. So we have to take a look at using these pesticides, using these toxic substances, which are having a terrible effect on our children. Just the other day, I attended a webinar, and one of the council members was Olivia Trujillo from Arvin, which is in the valley, San Joaquin Valley, but in Kern County. And they found arsenic in the water, and that was naturally occurring, but other elements too that contributed to breast cancer that killed her mom, that she suffered from, and a lot of people suffer from all up and down the Central Valley. And a lot of it is pesticides. People can't drink the water that comes from wells. They don't get the fresh water that goes to ag from the Delta. So I'm always trying to look at the big picture. How do we resolve the health issues we have right here on the ground in our city, next to the farmlands, and all over the state, and maybe all over the world? We've got to do better. And we are smart. We humans are smart. And we can use our smarts to try to find better ways to grow the crops we need and stop killing the ocean, stop killing people. So the other thing I've done in terms of being healthier is I really do believe we want to get into what's going on with the oil industry. There's no doubt that fossil fuels are creating climate change, which is impacting the weather cycle. Today, I listened to news about the hurricane coming to Louisiana and Florida and those places. And this gentleman who's a meteorologist said he's never seen anything like it in 40 years of doing that work. And we're still 2 months away from the end of hurricane season. People are slammed over and over again. And that is, I have no doubt, it's greenhouse gases that come from fossil fuels. So we have to make that transition, and we have to hold those companies that have been creating, of course, we're all driving the cars. So we have to have some leadership to change. leadership to do better, leadership to not leave the workers behind. Some people think I want to just cut people's jobs off. I do not, but I want the companies that have been working, that they've been working for, to be accountable to their employees. And I'm sorry, this is when the dogs start barking. Okay, I don't know if you heard them. There's a squirrel out there, okay, who's eating the persimmons. So we need what they call a just transition. You will see the opposite of a just transition in the coal industry. Just Google it. The miners, that has got to be one of the worst jobs in the world, being a coal miner. It's legendary, but it takes a toll. And what the miners get is black lung disease. One of the biggest coal companies just filed bankruptcy and dropped the health insurance and the pensions of the coal miners. Just left them just stranded by bankruptcy. Our oil industries in California have a huge liability for idle wells that are potentially going to pollute our groundwater, our environment. They have to be held accountable, and they could file bankruptcy and leave all of us holding the bag, just like the owners of Halico did. The owners of Halico violated Clean Air and Clean Water Act. The district attorney sued them. They stopped operations. They left us with 700,000 cubic yards, a slag heap of toxic materials, and they walked away because of bankruptcy. Who gets to clean it up? Who pays for it? We do. They don't. I understand they went elsewhere and started up again where there are less environmental regulation. So my philosophy is, don't hurt the workers, keep them employed in cleanup. Let's transition, make the polluters pay, and be responsible for what you did. I mean, if we make a mess at home, we got to clean it up. So what makes people think they can make a mess, hurt people, and then just walk away? We see it all the time. I will hold people accountable. And I would hope that not one person just says what's going to happen. You have to get the buy-in. First, you have to have the community wanting it. And the community is afraid of the transition because people have had great jobs. They've had great incomes, but those jobs are dwindling. So I like to say, let's not be caught looking at what's coming. Let's get modern. And I would say we've been modernizing in our city and our county. We joined the Clean Power Alliance. I'm very proud of that. That was one of my initiatives that my colleagues, all of them went along with it, except maybe one. I led the charge against having another gas-fired power plant on our coast, another 50 years or 30 years. We already did our part. And now we have Ventura Clean Energy Storage in El Rio, away from residents, clean, great jobs, project labor agreements, yes, union jobs, yes, construction jobs, and community benefits. I understand that they're repairing a water system close by, though they don't have to because they don't use water. So that's the future. Let's not let the future get away from us. Let's be prepared and take advantage of the good things that are going to come with it.
You know, Carmen, I appreciate all of those comments, and I do remember the hearings that you helped lead along with other local groups in the community and even in the county. One thing that at the INCO forum that you and your opponent participated in, one of his comments was that, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but that the last thing on people's mind is climate change. They care more about jobs than they do climate change. How do you feel when you hear comments like that, knowing that a healthy environment produces healthy residents, which means a healthy workforce, and you can be more productive? But when you hear things like that, what are your feelings about that?
Well, Daniel, I remember you speaking at the hearing and coming to council as well. And I was very appreciative of that and all of our local residents who did that, because we were really being pressured to drop our opposition. I could talk more about that. I have some interesting stories about that. But we persisted, and we got what is such a much better solution. I, I do think people care about climate change. Who cares really the most? Young people. They see their world potentially collapsing around them. They feel it getting hotter. We all feel it getting hotter. Where can you go? This is our only place to live. This is our only planet. So I think it's foolish to say we shouldn't care about it. And that's what leadership is. Look at what's coming. Get ready. Board up your windows. Stock up on food, clean water. Don't just say, I don't really care about what's coming. That is not leadership. I'm sorry. It's disappointing. It may sound good to a few people, but I'm telling you, our young people are watching and they're disappointed when leaders don't say, I'm going to take care of your future. Hey, I'm at the stage where I don't have to go out every morning at 8 o'clock and work. I want to work because I care about our community and our future. But those young people, they care. They care about housing, about getting a good job, having affordable education, and having a place to raise their own children without the threat of climate change. So it's possible that some people are not wanting to see what's coming, but I do see what's coming. I don't want to say I'm frightened, but I'm worried. And if people aren't worried, they are not paying attention. Read the newspaper. California's lost 4 million acres to fire just this time. I asked our fire chief once when we had the Thomas fire, when Ventura was burning down and people, so many people lost their homes. I asked him, could this happen here in Oxnard? Why would we, we're not in a forest, we're not in the urban interface with the forest. He said, oh yeah, because those embers can fly a mile with the winds, and we have winds. So we should not be cavalier. And during the fires, that smoke looked like fog in our city. We're breathing it. It has damaging impact on our lungs and our children's lungs and older people. So I'm not going to back off. I'm going to try to make it possible for people to get through this, have a good income. That's where the jobs are. The other day in another forum, the moderator said, what do you say to green energy jobs that pay less? Well, they do not pay less. They pay 13% more. And that's where the jobs are going. That's where the jobs are now. So let's not be, like I say, I love baseball. Let's not be caught looking when that third strike comes over the plate.
Carmen, let me ask you about, and you may mention of it, is Fisherman's Wharf. It is a county property that sits within the city's boundaries. And most recently, the county was ultimately denied by the Coastal Commission to have their proposed LCP, which is the local coastal plan, amended. It was also denied by the Planning Commission. It was also denied by the City Council for them to build 395, 97 housing units. And there was a big pushback from the residents. What would be your goal to try to revitalize Fisherman's Wharf? Because that is kind of a rundown area, but also be able to keep the city somewhat at the table during those discussions?
Excellent question. The city was not at the table, and that was why it just got stymied. And the county, for some reason that is probably not available to the public, we don't get to know some things. My theory is that there was a threat of litigation from the developer. I certainly could be wrong about that. I don't have inside information. I've asked our supervisors, but apparently they're not at liberty to say. And I understand that. I'm a lawyer. I know when you're told by your county council, your city attorney, you can't speak about this publicly. We've discussed it in closed session. And, if you actually speak about something from closed session, it's a misdemeanor and you could lose your elected position. It's very serious. So I respect that. And when I would ask, I would get evasive answers, and I understand why. So for the last few years, the developer has a plan and does not listen to the residents who want something different. They don't want a luxury enclave of apartments. They don't want a fortress. They don't want Marina del Rey. They want coastal access. They want a vibrant commercial tourist serving place, I believe, which may have a little bit of housing. Certainly we could use hotels. We don't have enough hotel space down there. A lot of times they're booked. And it is the gateway to the Channel Islands. It's a fantastic opportunity for the region, and not just Oxnard, the region and the residents. But I understand from talking to our city manager, the previous city manager, Greg Nyhoff, current city manager, Alex Nguyen, that they would have meetings with the county folks. It all would look good. They seem to have made some progress. And then they get a document that absolutely was the same every time. No change. We're coming. We're doing this open wide. And I really think that we have to respect the residents' interest in having something to say about what gets developed there. And we certainly, the county and all of us should respect a city's right to have something to say about what gets developed in the city. I think there was a lot of misunderstanding. A lot of people would say, why did City of Oxnard let it get so run down? Well, the property is owned by the county. The county was the owner. The county was responsible for the condition. But because, some people think, I don't know, that was a way of pressuring the residents to just accept anything because it was getting run down. At this point, I like to make a pitch for one of my favorite businesses down there, and that's Joanna Steele's Studio Gallery. And she probably is not listening, but I'll tell her, look, she framed this wonderful poster I have of a trip I took to Machu Picchu. So that is about one of the only businesses going there, Studio Gallery. I recommend people go there. It's open, she frames, she has great gifts. It's a place to go to support local business. And I think that we have toppers down there. We had the Elite Theater until the pandemic came, and a few other smaller convenience stores, but it really is nothing like it should be. And I think now that the county and the developer have hit the wall, there's no more to go. They did what they were maybe required to do, to go all the way to the Coastal Commission. What the Coastal Commission said unanimously is the city has a right to review the plan, and the Coastal Commission is looking at coastal access. And I think it's pretty clear the plan of the developer was would have taken away a lot of coastal access. That is, people just coming and enjoying the area, because it would have been cut off by the apartment complex. And it might have been people just coming for the weekend, not people who wanted to actually live here and participate in our city, which is, everybody has a right to do that, but not at the expense of coastal access.
Let me ask you about the Channel Islands Harbor, because the city of Oxnard, as we already mentioned, took the lead on the Pinker power plant that was on the coast where the current Mandalay power plant was at, and it ultimately ended up shutting down. And when that power plant shut down, we started seeing the blooms take place inside of the harbor. And the city responded with trying to figure out what was causing it. What is your approach moving forward and continuing to deal with this? I haven't heard very much about it lately, so I'm assuming that it maybe got somewhat under control, but maybe you can talk on that, of where we stand as far as those blooms taking place and how we move forward with this.
Well, when they're public, I certainly care about it, as do all of the other council members. And two things I'd like to say, preface this with. The power plant was going to shut down by action of the State Water Board, not because of Oxnard or me, but the State Water Board said to all of the coastal energy plants on California's coast, you have to shut down by 2020. You cannot keep sucking seawater in with all the sea life that it destroys. You can't do that anymore. It's very harmful to California's ocean and coastline. So it was going to happen and was going to have to stop pumping seawater in. So that wasn't Oxnard's decision. That was the state of California's water board. So, but there is a problem because the pumping did keep water flowing more, and there needs to be more pumping. The other thing is there needs to be less runoff from agriculture that carries with it not just the trash, but the pesticides. So we'll really want to take a look. I think there's some proposals out there to do that. There are some, I understand, some unpermitted drains that go right into the harbor. And I mean, pumps, it's not rocket science. It's a question of resources. Lately, I haven't heard much about it, and I should take a ride out there and take a look for myself, which I've done in the past. And I can imagine how unpleasant it is to live there and look out and see algae bloom and to see dead fish. This is unacceptable. We have to find the resources to do that. You know, the other day at council, we unanimously made a deal with the homeowners association out there, or the residents, to half fund seawall repair. Now, some people said, why is the city putting resources into that area? Because it's so unfair. We have other parts of the city are not getting the resources. People always talk about South Oxnard, and I agree. But we are one city, and if a house falls into the water, that's very terrible for the homeowner and terrible for the city's finances. So we have to find a way to fix that. And when one part of the city has got a problem, it belongs to all of us. When South Oxnard has issues with overcrowding and therefore the problems that come with that, a lot of problems, that's a problem for all of us. We need to find the resources to deal with it. But there's some things that you have to start planning now for this. And that's what that action was at City Council. Planning now to raise the money to fix the seawalls, because otherwise it gets more costly later. And I think that's the same is true with the water quality in the harbor. It's almost a natural thing though, when you build away from the ocean, the tidal flow is less. And for a long time, the tidal flow has been helped by the pumping at the Mandalay station, generating station, but that was going to be over anyway. And again, we can learn so many lessons from things that were planned a long time ago, no end date, and then the end comes, like we have no plan. These companies that build these things, there is no plan for them to take their structure down. We have to find a way to find the money to do that. So I've learned a lot of lessons. I hope our city's learned a lot of lessons. Before you let something get built, have the plan for decommissioning. You know, there's a fable, it might be true, of people who built a cathedral in Europe with a certain kind of wood, and it burned down. And someone said, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get the wood? But they had already planted a forest of the kind of trees they needed to build that, you know, decades before. So when they lost that cathedral, they had planned years before for the timber to rebuild it. And that's what we always have to be thinking. What's going to happen in 30 years? Are we going to be able to take care of our planet? Are we going to have the food, the water? Let's think about it now. Instead of they say, instead of eating our seed corn, let's plan for the future. We didn't do that back then. Our city didn't do that, years and years ago. They didn't do that when they built the keys, and now we have to do that. So that's my philosophy about all this stuff. Think about the consequences.
So there's two more questions that I want to ask you, and then we're going to go into the 6 measures that are going to be on Oxnard residents' ballots this year. So the first question is that since the March primary, and even before then, you had negative ads run against you, and many of it was coming from the oil industry. And at one of the forums, you showed a little bit of passion as to why didn't anybody really stand up and say those are lies. What are your feelings that these multi-million-dollar companies ultimately see you as a threat to them and are trying everything to keep you off the board of supervisors?
In a way, it's totally expected, because let me go back to what happened with the Puente power plant. I right away started saying, because they told us they were going to move the power plant off the coast, and I think it was a way to kind of lull us into thinking that was going to happen. We didn't have to fight them. We had our local chamber of commerce come and say, don't object, because they're going to give you a good deal. I met with people from the company, and I always had somebody with me who could be a witness, because I was pretty sure that they were either going to sweet talk me, threaten me, or later come out and say I wanted a bribe. So I've been very cautious with these kind of companies who have been used to getting away with what they want, just like the LNG plant. Probably when you were a little kid, Daniel, when they tried to shove that down our throats and the community rose up and said, no, we don't want that. That's dangerous. That's dirty. That's polluting. We don't need it. It turns out we didn't need it. They were trying to sell us a bill of goods because, in fact, we're exporting natural gas. We don't need to import it. So when I heard that I want us to be modern. I don't want us to be stuck with obsolete industries, especially ones that hurt us, that hurt our children and our future. So naturally, that's a threat to existing businesses. And of course, let's understand that they don't have the public's interest in mind. They have their bottom line as the first priority, their shareholders. And look, let me just name them. California Resources Corporation is the successor to Occidental Oil, one of the legendary historic oil companies. And yes, California's had a lot of oil in our state. And they have tremendous liabilities for idle oil wells. They have filed bankruptcy after the primary. And why did they spend $900,000 against Kim Stevenson and I? Because we were going to hold them accountable. And I still plan to do that. And again, I would like to ask the people who are really concerned about the viability of the fossil fuel industry to take a look at that. The toxic wells, the toxic legacy of idle oil wells in our state is a threat to our state's economy, our environment, our health. So we have to hold them accountable. Be accountable to your workers, to the communities where you've left these liabilities. So again, I'm not surprised that they did that. Looking back, it could be funny. I heard these horrible things about me on Spanish language radio, and I think some people thought it was true. And I would encounter people and they would say, oh, you went to China on a luxury trip and you're in China's pocket, me in China's pocket, as if I could do anything for China. though I did try to encourage some sister city relationships, pretty difficult so far away. I went on an official trade delegation with California State Treasurer John Chung and elected officials from all over California and Nevada, Republicans and Democrats. We worked very hard to meet with Chinese officials, neighborhood groups, individual people, and I came back suffering from the pollution of China. We would arrive in cities at night and it looked like fog, but it wasn't fog. It was pollution. I think I had a respiratory illness for about 2 months after I came back. And that was the kind of thing I was attacked and I stayed in a luxury hotel. Bunch of baloney. A friend of mine who had season tickets, who doesn't live in the city, who doesn't do any work for the city, gave me his season tickets for one night. I went and suddenly I was getting free tickets. I got free parking at Cal State Channel Islands because I'd been on the President's Advisory Board and I have to go to meetings sometimes. I'm on the site authority. And suddenly I was getting this huge gift of a parking pass. So I would just say voters need to be informed. We're all facing slanderous things against people that it's not true, against people that I may not support, but this is a lie. Let's ask for the truth. Let's make decisions based on what are the facts and not these slanders. And I'm really sad that they did that to me, that they weren't just honest and said, we don't like Carmen because she's going to hold us accountable. And our bottom line doesn't allow us to be accountable, or she's wrong about greenhouse gases, something like that. But instead of these lies, it was pretty, but I've toughened up. I've been toughened up on city council. It's not been an easy ride for any of us, including my friend Tim. It's not been easy for any of us. So we just have to keep on speaking the truth, saying what our policies are, and let the voters decide. That's what I want to do.
Thank you for that, Carmen. And the last question before we move into the measures is that ultimately the next session for the Board of Supervisors will have a pretty new Board of Supervisor panel. It has been a number of years since past Board of Supervisors had served more than 20 years on the Board of Supervisors. You're going to have a new Board of Supervisor from District 1. District 4, Supervisor Huber, he's barely in his second year. You have Supervisor Long, who just won re-election for a second term, and the 5th District is going to have a brand new supervisor. Knowing that how fresh and how new this board will be, what are your plans to try to foster them and provide some type of direction towards moving Ventura County in a way that benefits residents throughout the entire county?
I'm not new to county affairs. I've been involved in quite a few regional and actually county-led organizations. Like currently, I've been on the Air Pollution Control District for a few years. I've been on local area agency formation commission. I'm the chair this year. I'm chair right now of the Animal Services Commission. I am chair of Ventura County Regional Energy Alliance. I represent the city on Southern California Association of Governments. I'm also on Beacon, which is Beach Erosion and Nourishment Commission, which looks at all of the coastline from Santa Barbara to Ventura County and all the coastal cities to deal with things like erosion, sea level rise, the health of the ocean. So I've been very involved with a number of county activities. Right now, this afternoon, I was in a meeting with the public health officials and the county doing work in our South Oxnard for trying to get the word out about keeping the virus down, keeping people safe, especially our Spanish speaking, Mixteco speaking population. And again, living under difficult circumstance, not so easy. They can't telecommute like many of us can. They have to go out there and then they come back to maybe overcrowded situation and maybe don't have all the resources they need to stay safe. So I'm involved in a lot of county activities. I've had the flexibility to do that. Maybe not everybody had it, but I took advantage of it and tried to make Oxnard's voice heard everywhere I go, the residents' voice heard. And I think that was a little bit unusual for the county. I have spoken on behalf of a number of things that have gone before the Board of Supervisors as an individual and not necessarily on behalf of the city. I always say I'm speaking as an individual member of the city council, not on behalf of the city or of my colleagues. For example, I asked the county Board of Supervisors to do a declaration to ask our county fair board not to allow gun shows. The city, with my leadership, the majority of us approved of sending a letter to the fair board and saying, we don't think a state property in the county fair is a state property, fairgrounds, should be promoting gun culture. We have gun stores in our city, legitimate private businesses. If people want to buy a gun or paraphernalia and ammunition, go to one of our stores where there will be all the regulations and you'll be supporting a local business, but don't have the state property supporting gun shows. That's the kind of leadership I have. I am not afraid to take on things that some people think are controversial because in my opinion, these are my values and it's in the best interest of our community. And people have a choice. What's in the best interest? Have I stood up for my values? Yes, I have. Have I taken a pass when a vote came that was difficult, like raising our wastewater rates so we could safely flush our toilets and have the infrastructure we needed? And I remember, Daniel, you came forward and supported the council. Not everybody did. And we have a good system now. We still have a ways to go, but I don't shirk from my duty. I got there. I got elected to represent taking into consideration how people feel, but also to represent what I think is best for our city today and for our county tomorrow. I will continue doing that. If people don't like it, they can tell me, we can have a discussion and they can vote for me or not. But I don't hide how I feel about things. I will listen. I'll take criticism, good suggestions. I've changed my mind sometimes, but I'm not going to put my values, I'm not going to compromise my values. I grew up this way. I'm proud of that. And if people don't like it, they may have other choices.
Thank you, Carmen. Now we're going to jump into the 6 measures that are on Oxnard's residents' ballots this year. We have Measure E. Thank you for that. We have Measure E that was placed on the ballot unanimously by the City Council, which is a 1.5% local sales tax for city services. Now, there is a lot of talks about the city has had decades of mismanagement. Why are they looking to the residents for a bailout? And we had Oxnard City Manager Alex Nguyen with us for a past special edition of our show. And we talked about Measure E and how cities across the nation right now are really dipping into the reserves to pay for everyday services, but some cities don't have the luxury of having large reserves. What was your, drive to vote in favor of placing this on the ballot for the residents?
Well, I've been paying attention to our finances and we don't have good choices here. And I realize that nobody likes to pay more for taxes. This is an urgent measure to keep our city afloat. I was hoping that we would get more attention from the federal government to return our tax dollars. This is not charity. This is what our people are paying into the federal system through sales tax, property tax, income tax, other fees. And we need to get some of it back. All of the cities, I was at the League of Cities virtual meeting today, and we're all in difficulty, some in more difficulty than others. Oxnard is in serious difficulty. I would encourage everybody to see some of the materials that are on Facebook, the Yes on E campaign, to see what's at stake here. Nobody likes the limitation of services. I hear it every day about the parks, the potholes. Today I heard it about the golf course. That's a different issue with perhaps lack of attention by the management there, golf course management, not our city. The homelessness, the resources we've had to put into paying attention to the issues caused by that. Measure E is just, our reserves are really low. If we have, the fear is, I don't even like to speak it, is an earthquake, because it's predicted. It's not like it might happen. It's going to happen. We have to be prepared. Our public safety, fire, and police need to be there for us when we're under a crushed building, or we have an auto accident, somebody has a heart attack, and it's getting pretty slim. And so this is, I don't think it's a really painful thing to pay another 1.5%. The other thing that's coming is we think the state is going to adopt a measure, and then the city of Oxnard will have no access to that extra bit of money. The state will have it, and we'll have to be begging to get our fair share. So you're not going to like it if the state makes you pay that and we don't get anything for it. But if Oxnard gets it, you elect the right people to city council, as I believe you have in the past few years, you will get transparency. We've had to make some really tough decisions that I will never forget. I won't get over it, what we've had to do. But the alternative was, if we didn't do that last year, we would have been laying more people off this year. We haven't laid anybody else off since last year. And we don't want to lay any more people off, because the people who work for the city are the way the services are delivered to the public. You can't deliver it without people. They have to be compensated. And if we don't compensate them well, they'll leave. And then we're really in trouble. So I support it because we absolutely need it. Please be an informed voter. Understand what you're getting with this. Stay tuned to make sure your council individual member, as well as council as a whole, and whoever is the mayor, is responsive to you and answers your questions. You know, during the past few years, it's talked about mismanagement, but actually there's no evidence that anybody ever embezzled anything. People were given maybe salaries that they shouldn't have gotten. Maybe they got benefits they shouldn't have gotten, but nobody had their hands in the till per se. It's my view. And the mismanagement was failing to tell the council and the public what our true financial picture was. It was kicking the can down the road. Current council now, for the last few years, has had to suffer the consequences. And it's not mismanagement, it's limited resources that are shrinking. Things cost more every day. People are entitled to their pensions. It's a contract, you can't just do away with them. Please be informed voters. You know, before I got on council, I was uninformed about a lot of things, the complications of financing a city. And for any of the people out there who are running for office or thinking about running for office, get informed about this, like the backbone of the city. Where does the money come from? And I'll tell you, sometimes we spend more time over little bits of money than the big picture. And the big picture is, yes, we need economic development. We need jobs. We need more housing in the right place to support infrastructure and the costs that come with it. But right now, with the pandemic, we are in serious financial stress, please support Measure E. If you want that paramedic to come to your house when your loved one's in distress, if you want to be able to use the library, if you want your parks to look good, do you want to have a good sanitation system, please support Measure E. We're gonna have to deal with it one way or the other. Please support Measure E.
Measure F, which is permit simplicity. It's supposed to expedite the permitting process. What people are confused about is that it actually talks about building, not necessarily planning. And the proponent of this measure has been harking on the planning aspect and not so much on the building part. What is your position on Measure F?
Well, I'd like to say it sounds good at first, right? Just go get your permit and start building. This is the issue I see, is that the unintended consequences of this kind of measure would mean that, hey, say you're in your home, everything's going great. Your neighbor goes for a simplicity permit to build an extreme example, a 7-Eleven next to you. Hey, they already got the permit. They started working. They hired the crew, the contractor, the architect. And then you find out and you try to do everything you can to stop it. It's going to cost that person, it's going to cost you a lot of aggravation when it should go through the planning process. And yeah, it could be more streamlined, more efficient. We need the staff to do that too. And that's been a problem, staffing and planning. But just be careful what you wish for. You like simplicity, think about where you live now and what you'd be okay with when someone buys the property next to you or across the street and puts in something that you have nothing to say about because, hey, they already got the permit. Permit simplicity sounds great. Maybe not so much.
Measure L, which is taking the city treasurer position, which is an elected position, and merging it with the chief financial officer, the CFO, which is a hired position. What is your thoughts on that one? Measure L.
Please do not vote for this. Right now, and I have been trying to get something passed by the city. It has to go to the public to make this an appointed position. Because right now, it is anybody could run for this. If you're 18 and a voter in the city of Oxnard, you do not need to have any financial experience, period. We've been lucky because our current treasurer has financial experience. What if someone got this job who didn't have any financial? We've been lucky in a way. So I want to see the treasurer position as well as the clerk, and we've been very lucky with the clerk. We have a fantastic clerk. We had a great clerk before. Michelle Ascension took the job and she won. Rose Chaparro's coming. She'll be great. She has no opposition. So we've been lucky. We've been lucky, but we could get very unlucky because these two positions, the clerk and the treasurer, have no requirements. Just be 18 and a voter. Think about it. This is crazy. Please don't vote for this. This is, it just can't, our CFO has tremendous experience. It's in the job description, experience, qualifications, oversight, and accountability. This would give whoever is the treasurer very little accountability. And I understand that this position could override the city council's decision under certain circumstances. So the people you vote for as council members to make decisions for you on budget and other things could have all of their opinions and their decisions thrown out. It's wacky.
Wow. Measure M, which is the city meeting procedural rules. This measure goes that no city council meeting or committee meeting is allowed to take place before 5 p.m. But there are some exceptions to it that CAGs, the citizens advisory groups, are allowed to meet before 5 o'clock, and that closed session can take place, or that if an emergency meeting or a meeting with, say, the governor coming to the state, to the city, that only time that he can meet is 2 o'clock, then you guys can meet then. What is your position on this? Because the way I look at it is that the Sunshine Ordinance really opened up everything for the public, made it very transparent, and gave tons of opportunity for the public to really reach out to staff to know what's happening. And I'm sorry for answering that for you, but
I approve that message. I signed a lot of these measures, the arguments against them. Why would you want to straitjacket the city in terms of its operation? And is it because the proponent gets off at work at 5? And then you have to record all of the meetings ahead of time. It makes no sense. It'll cost money. And this is just a huge waste of time. This last council meeting, we all started at 4:30. We went to almost midnight. If some of these times, if we start at 5, we're gonna have to cut off people at 10 when we have major issues. We won't be able to get to things. Why would you want to micromanage the city this way? It's very weird. It's bizarre. So you gave the argument. I'll endorse your argument.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, Measure N, which talks about the city meeting certain road standards, but it also ties in Measure O, which was approved by voters back in 2008, that if the city does not meet certain road conditions, that it will sunset Measure O a lot sooner than what voters voted for. But if the city meets those standards, the city is allowed to extend Measure O for increments of 5 years. What is your position on this?
Well, streets are important. People complain about them a lot, justifiably so. Costs a lot of money to fix the streets. We have no money to fix the alleys right now. Things cost money. But what if we hadn't had Measure O to keep a fire station fully staffed? What if we didn't have that emergency fund to keep us out of bankruptcy? We could say, hey, we got great streets, but we don't have police or fire, and we had to close our library. Measure O initially, again, like I said a little while ago, before I got on council, you just don't know enough about finance, and you think it's all one pot. Maybe don't think that. There are a lot of different pots. Measure O has saved our city. I'm convinced it saved lives. And instead, you can have beautiful streets, but consequences with public safety and rec services and cultural services. We've already taken quite a hit. So why would we do this? I initially didn't like Measure O because I had no idea. I don't think the council then had an idea of our true financial picture. I thought it was just a general tax. We shouldn't have it unless it could be proved as needed for a specific thing. But in fact, it has saved us. And so trying to turn back the clock on what has saved lives is very foolish. And you just have to wonder why someone spends all this time working on these measures that I believe are very destructive to our city. Elect the right people to make the tough decisions, and I believe we have. We try to do the best we can. We don't always get it 100% right. We try to serve this community for what is needed today and in the future. By approving Measure N, we're cutting off the future saving of the city. What if we had an earthquake and we didn't have Measure O, or we didn't have Measure E to get us through that disaster that might be coming to us? What if we didn't have it right now during the pandemic? We've put a lot of money into that already, and we're going to put more of our resources We have to build up our reserves. And these four measures by the proponent is just, I'll just say, it just seems like a little malicious hobby. I can say that now, I'm not on company time here. A malicious hobby to mess with the people's good intentions, their first instinct. Nobody likes taxes. Why aren't you doing it this way? I want my street fixed. I don't want to start a council meeting at 3:00, which I'm not sure we've ever done. Just elect the right people to do the good things. Go and criticize them, demand a change, get new people in, but don't do these measures that actually tie the city's hands behind its back to do what is absolutely going to be necessary, possibly in the future. I don't support any of them except Measure E. Terrible.
Now, the last measure, and this is a county measure, which is Measure O, which it says that it allows commercial cultivation, processing, distribution, and sale of cannabis. So it's ultimately a tax on this industry. What is your position on Measure O? And again, for our viewers, this is a county tax, a county measure, not a city measure.
Right. Well, it's right here. Please, everybody, take a look at all this county voter information. It's here. And my statement's in there, and everybody's statement as well. Measure O, you'll notice it has no argument against it. I've looked at it. I think the county has learned a lot of lessons from other cities and counties where they've perhaps weren't able to consider the consequences. Thinking of Santa Barbara and what happened in Carpinteria, and people are not happy with the smell too close to schools and homes. And that's an issue. And this resolves a lot of those issues. So I'm going to vote for it. I think it's reasonable, comply with existing state and local laws, mostly the setbacks for schools, housing, and sensitive sites. I think it's good. I'm going to vote for it.
Thank you, Carmen. So, Carmen, we have been in this conversation for an hour and a half. We touched on a lot of topics, and I'm pretty sure there are some topics that we didn't get an opportunity to reach on. So consider this your closing statement, and speak on whatever topic that you want people to know, your candidacy, and why you are the right choice to represent the city of Oxnard on the Board of Supervisors for the 5th District.
Okay, well, I want to say that it's a great opportunity to thank you, but I happen to know that people lose attention after a while, and I think we're getting close to that point. And I appreciate the very thoughtful questions and letting me, really expound on things. And my dog is saying it's time to, go back to normal. See that? Pico. But I want to ask people, you'll get this flyer in the mail. If it didn't come today, it's coming. It explains, first of all, how to vote, where to vote safely. It also tells you about my proposals on jobs and housing, healthcare. We've got to beef up our healthcare system. If we're not healthy, if our fellow neighbors aren't healthy, we're going to get sick. It's going to cost us. It's going to cost everybody. We got to be healthy. First priority, health. Jobs, climate change, and leadership. I've shown the leadership. I didn't wait for somebody to propose something. I took the lead, and I think the consequences are visible. Our city has become modern. Our city's a leader in so many ways, and I think it's because of my leadership. Our economy, I really want to support our local jobs and local businesses. The big guys, they got the big Paycheck Protection Program bailout. Even some organizations that shouldn't have got it, but our little small businesses had a hard time, especially our Spanish-speaking businesses, because they didn't have the technology, may not have had the internet. I've talked to people like at the Economic Development Collaborative that I chaired last year, that the city and all the cities participate in. People were trying to apply online with their iPhone. People didn't speak English well enough. People needed help. We need to help those businesses because the basis of our economy in Oxnard is the small businesses. We're going to get some great big businesses. We didn't talk about the Amazon thing. We should talk about that for a minute, just a minute. But we've got to really, this is what employs people. Buy local if you can. Buy, our neighbors are working there. They need the jobs. Go to our restaurants, buy gift certificates, do takeout. When it's safe, go and safely be in restaurants. I really miss that. So this talks about quality of life, housing in the right place, a lot of options. Let's take care of our seniors. We have the silver tsunami coming. That's an opportunity for more healthcare workers. We have to be the kind of community, Oxnard and the county and California, that takes care of vulnerable people. What kind of society are we going to be when we don't care about our seniors, where we don't care about our special needs kids or people with illnesses or disabilities, including those suffering from mental illness? We have to be compassionate because it's going to cost us later in human suffering and low productivity. I feel so strongly about it, but that's been my life. I've represented folks with those needs. I understand there are people who are teetering. They're middle class and they're teetering on the edge. We have to help them. We have to demand that those with the resources at the federal government provide the support we are entitled to. It's not a charity again. It's what keeps us going. The Fed chair, Jerome Powell, said it will be a tragedy if we don't get the support the individuals and the businesses need. So we need change. I want to say that, I want to just say this about the Amazon deal. These are not high-tech jobs. They're basic jobs with good wages, good health care benefits. I started out my political career working on the Coalition for Living Wage. The Coalition for Living Wage is getting our city and the county and other cities that when they were going to contract with a vendor, they would demand that that vendor pay a living wage. And there's a very sad history in Oxnard, which we took care of, that this was way before I was in council. So I support the living wage ordinance of our city, which requires a certain pay and a higher pay if there's no healthcare benefits. These jobs will have healthcare benefits. That's fantastic. Again, these are not high-tech jobs. They're not super high paying, but it's a building block to what we need. And I want to see Oxnard residents get those first. That's something I was really hoping to see, and I think we will see it. And in conjunction with support from the chamber, the support from Oxnard College, I'm hoping, and get people ready to apply for those jobs so that our people in the city of Oxnard and greater Oxnard get those jobs. So, and we have to make sure that every employer, all of them, treat their employees fairly. And I'm very passionate about that. I don't want to leave anybody behind. I don't want people exploited. I want people to be as well compensated as they can. So the last thing I'll say is that I'm not a status quo person. I believe in showing leadership. I believe in showing up for my values and not hiding behind the door. When push comes to shove, I will be there for you. I will tell you what I think. I'll try to do my best. And I have done what I think are some great things. I did an initiative to give local businesses who hire local or who are local an incentive in procurement in Oxnard. I see the county doesn't have that. I want to see that at the county level. I want our local businesses, whether it's a construction company, a vendor of some product or service, to get first crack at it. I'm not for favoritism. I'm not for nepotism, but I want our tax dollars to be invested in our community and not elsewhere where people go spend what should be spent in our county to support our local economy and our families. So I really feel strongly about that. Again, the COVID crisis is an opportunity to, I'm going to quote somebody here, build back better, infrastructure, modernization, clean energy where the jobs are now and are going to be more, healthier environment, help and hope for our young people who need housing, affordable education, internet, broad internet. And I will make my office in the city of Oxnard. I will be here so people can knock on my door like they do now or call me anytime, and so I can address their problems. And I will work very hard with our city, our council, whoever's there, to get what Oxnard needs to get its fair share of all of the county resources, whether it's financial or technical or anything. And I will work with people, and I will work with my colleagues on the council, even if we're not going to agree on everything, to get to yes. I know how to do that, and I will do that. And I would just like to say, I have fantastic endorsements. Here they are. I've got United Farm Workers, Dolores Huerta, California Nurses Association, Oxnard Police and Fire, local organizations, and the Latino peace officers. I'm very proud of that one because they're standing up for justice. And of course, the Sierra Club and the Women's Political Council, the Young Democrats. Yes, I'm a Democrat. I'm proud of being a Democrat. I'm the only Democrat endorsed in this race. I stand up for those values, but I listen to other people, and I do have people from other parties who support me, and people who have no party. I listen, I will do what is common sense, but I will move our county forward into the future. And I think I've already done that for Oxnard. I want to keep doing it. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Carmen, again, for joining me in this conversation, providing a lot of information. I know my time being involved in the city, we have not always agreed on every single thing, but a majority of those issues and challenges that Oxnard has faced, I have agreed with you. It's always been about the health and welfare of our residents, and I've always agreed with you. And as someone who is of a different party from you, I do support you. And I encourage other residents, of course, do your due diligence, but this is somebody who actually has a proven track record way before she jumped onto the city council of fighting for our community of the city of Oxnard. So thank you for that, Carmen. And thank
Daniel,
you.
I just want to recognize that you are an essential worker. I know that you provide public transportation, and I think it's a sacrifice under these circumstances. And I hope you stay safe and continue what you're doing. People need you out there. We need to keep you safe to continue doing that. So I appreciate what you said. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Carmen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carmen Ramirez. She is a candidate for the 5th District Board of Supervisors, representing a majority of the city of Oxnard and the unincorporated areas such as Silver Strand, El Rio, Nyland Acres, Strickland, and I'm sure I'm missing one. But please be sure to visit her website. Carmen, can you provide your website? So
Carmen4supervisor.com. Also, I'd like to give people my personal cell. So if they had a question, they could text me or call me, and I'll get back to you unless it's the middle of the night. It's 805-216-7362. If you'd like to send an email, it's carmen4oxnard@gmail.com. That's CARMEN 4 oxnard@gmail.com. Thank you.
thank you again, Carmen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Oxnard Live. I'm your host, Daniel Chavez Jr. All live and 100% real. Just quick reminders is that October 31st is the deadline for the census. So if you have not done the census, please do that. It is very important for our community to have accurate numbers so that we receive our fair share of funding for the next 10 years. And if you haven't already, your mail ballots should have gone out. So please vote, submit those ballots. There are drop-off boxes at City Hall, at the public library, and pretty much throughout the county. Also, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd, which Oxnard Live will actually be having a live election night. So please be sure to join us on there. I will have a panel of 3 more people joining me, and we will be talking about the candidates and the measures all night for election night. Once again, thank you, Carmen, for joining me in this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, Oxnard Live, all live, 100% real. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.